They called the Galactic Concord, a treaty designed to end centuries of war across the stars. Every major species signed it under the watchful eyes of the galactic media, parading their commitment to peace as if violence had suddenly gone extinct. Humanity smiled, nodded, and held up their end of the pen. They made a show of lowering their shields, deactivating fleets, and inviting diplomats into Earth's orbit. But not a single human soul believed the war was over, because Earth's history was different. Peace never came from paper. It came from preparation, and humans prepared. While the alien empires held ceremonies and exchanged empty platitudes, Earth's defense ministers convened in deep bunkers buried under continents. No press coverage, no diplomatic photographers, just raw data and hard truths. Project Sentinel was greenlit 2 days after the treaty signing. It wasn't a weapon. It was worse. It was a network of deep space AI observers seated across known space, cloaked, self-sustaining, and invisible to every detection method known to alien science. The first year after the treaty, the Concord reported a 23% decline in border skirmishes. Alien analysts hailed it as a golden era, but Sentinel saw something else. Military-grade comms running dark channels between fleets that were supposedly disbanded. Resource shipments rerouted toward dead sectors with no known colonies. Unmarked vessels moving in synchronized patterns beyond civilian space lanes. And in every intercepted signal, a recurring phrase translated across multiple alien tongues. Phase precursor. Containment of the Deathworlders. That was humanity's name to them, Deathworlders. A moniker whispered in alien strategy circles and academic papers alike. It was a term of both respect and dread. No species had evolved on a planet as violent, unpredictable, or biologically hostile as Earth. And no species had survived the things humans had survived without falling apart. The aliens never forgot it. They simply smiled when they spoke of peace and lied behind their teeth. Humanity didn't call them out. Not yet. That would tip the game. Instead, Earth reactivated the solar defense grid under the label of orbital restructuring. Entire cities were moved underground for climate stability. Civilian fusion plants began testing weapons-grade plasma generation for power efficiency. And orbital shipyards doubled production, hidden by redirected satellite mirrors and jamming fields. Everything had a civilian explanation. Nothing was questioned. Meanwhile, Sentinel's intel grew darker. What appeared to be pirate raids were, under closer analysis, coordinated stress tests on human patrol routes. The same patterns repeated across 3 sectors, with timing and asset deployment too precise to be coincidence. Alien diplomats would send condolences, condemning the attacks and offering assistance. Those condolences were logged, cross-referenced, and marked. Several of the offers mirror internal Concord contingency plans, leaked documents humanity had intercepted and decrypted months prior. Then came the intercept. A burst transmission from a Varnathi carrier on the edge of Concord space bounced off an asteroid and landed squarely in Sentinel's net. The language was encoded, but the sentiment was unmistakable. A date, a list of targeted human colonies, a phrase, strike swift, strike clean. It wasn't a plan. It was a countdown. Earth's response was silence. Not outrage, not protest. Silence. Because now came the part humanity had waited for. All outer colonies listed in the intercept began an immediate, silent evacuation under emergency mining drills. Thousands of civilians relocated without raising a single flag. Simultaneously, those colonies were rigged with layered defenses, kinetic barriers, fusion mines, black site rail cannons previously thought mothballed. Autonomous defense AIs, long banned by the Concord, were brought online under sealed authorization protocols. Still, Earth played the part. They attended Concord summits. They hosted peace symposiums. They signed trade pacts with the same species who plotted to erase them. And as the date on the intercepted message grew closer, Earth's preparations went deeper. Every colonial governor was replaced by covert operatives trained in wartime response. Terraforming projects were suspended under false maintenance reports. Resources were diverted into hidden caches and fortified storage bunkers. On Mars, a classified program titled Dawn Reckoning activated its final phase. It wasn't a weapon in the traditional sense. It was a predictive warfare AI, built not to respond to war, but to anticipate it. Dawn Reckoning simulated every possible vector, fleet movement, and strike path the aliens could launch. It concluded one thing with 99.87% certainty. The Concord was not a failure. It was a setup. The Galactic Treaty was never meant to create peace. It was meant to disarm the humans long enough for the rest of the galaxy to catch up. But they had made one fatal mistake. They assumed Earth believed in words. On Europa, Project Umbra deployed its assets. Stealth fleets made of hull materials that absorbed light and bent gravity, equipped with weapons that didn't leave wreckage, and AI captains that required no oxygen or loyalty. These were not warships by conventional terms. They were ghosts, designed to strike where no enemy could predict, with no trail to follow. Earth's shadow fleets began surrounding key Concord systems weeks before the scheduled betrayal. Communications were sliced, satellites replaced with dummies, spaceports mapped for demolition. No human presence was announced. The galaxy still believed in the illusion. When a Terran diplomat sat before the Concord Council, shaking hands and toasting interstellar unity, 3 separate deep space arrays were already targeting the homeworlds of the leading species involved in betrayal. The diplomat's words were recorded, but not for history's sake. They were a distraction. The day before the strike, humanity intercepted a final burst of encoded instructions, authorization of full-spectrum suppression across all human colonies. It was signed by the Concord Supreme. The order had been issued, but humanity had never ceded control. At that moment, every fleet that moved against a human colony was under satellite surveillance. Their formation, weapon status, even pilot vitals were being logged by Earth's black AI networks. And Earth did nothing. Not yet. The goal wasn't to stop the betrayal. It was to expose it, to let it happen just long enough that every denial, every lie, every we didn't know would collapse under the weight of evidence. And when the first Concord fleet crossed into Terran space, Earth did not fire. Instead, the colonies on their target list began broadcasting live feeds of empty streets, silent cities, and weapon platforms rising from the ground. Alien commanders hesitated. Some pulled back, some pushed forward, unsure if the footage was real. Then the first kinetic strike hit. A Varnathi dreadnought disintegrated mid-orbit, not from a missile, but from a controlled burst of gravitational compression launched from a mining rig below. Another ship veered off course, colliding with a stealth satellite that detonated a plasma warhead inside its engine. Then came the human response. But that part wasn't broadcast. It wasn't meant for cameras. It wasn't meant to be witnessed. It was meant to be remembered by those who survived, and most wouldn't. Within 12 minutes of the first attack, 13 Concord vessels were obliterated, not disabled, not damaged, obliterated without energy trails, without wreckage, without warning. Human countermeasures struck from places the enemy never considered. A reflection array hidden inside an asteroid redirected a solar flare into a Concord carrier's drive core. A dormant probe, thought lost decades ago, reactivated and hijacked an alien command ship's navigation system, crashing into its own escort. Across 6 star systems, coordinated attacks against human colonies failed instantly. The invaders arrived to find empty settlements, all automated with decoys running routine life simulations. When Concord troops breached the facilities, defense systems activated with calculated lethality. No random gunfire, no chaos, just clinical precision. They weren't designed to stop armies. They were designed to teach lessons. On the planet Eldranos 4, an assault force of over 4,000 landed expecting resistance. They found quiet. Then, from beneath the surface, microdrones flooded the terrain, programmed to pierce soft tissue, scramble neurointerfaces, and vanish. 90 seconds later, only 200 soldiers remained conscious. 95 seconds later, none did. A single beacon was left transmitting in all Concord languages. We knew Earth's retaliation was not centralized. No massive fleet arrived to take revenge. No declarations were made. Instead, across the galaxy, every hidden unit, every silent watcher, Every piece of machinery that had waited in silence for years moved in perfect sync. They weren't told when. They simply knew. The betrayal had begun. And now it would be ended. A Concord intelligence hub in the Drazen Belt, considered impenetrable, buried under kilometers of ice and reinforced alloys, was infiltrated not by ships, but by a virus hidden in a trade manifest 3 years old. The virus activated when the hub tried to analyze human supply chain disruptions. Within 3 minutes, its databases were locked, command lines reversed, and every classified order implicating the Concord leadership rerouted to every faction-neutral archive across known space. The lie wasn't just exposed. It was weaponized. Entire Concord fleets found their own species soldiers abandoning them. Civil uprisings broke out when planetary populations discovered the truth, that peace had been a setup for war and that their governments had lied. Humanity didn't need to fire on their homeworlds. They let the truth detonate instead. Meanwhile, Earth's ghost fleets began appearing in systems considered far beyond Terran reach. Not to invade. To remind, a human vessel would appear in orbit, shut down every comm satellite, project a simple message, "We saw you coming," and vanish before local forces could respond. They struck no civilian targets. They answered no hails. And that silence, that control, it terrified more than any bombardment could. In the Concord War Council chambers, panic took hold. Leaders demanded explanations from each other, some denying knowledge, others accusing their rivals. The fragile unity that once stood against humanity fractured in hours. Every species blamed the other for the plan's exposure. But one truth cut through all the noise: they had underestimated the humans. They thought humanity's silence was weakness, that Earth's patience was ignorance. They didn't understand that humans had centuries of conflict encoded in their DNA. That distrust wasn't paranoia. It was survival instinct. In response to the cascading collapse of their offensive, Concord Command authorized Protocol Echelon, the scorched earth fallback. It would involve striking known human-controlled sectors with planet crackers, sacrificing entire Concord fleets if necessary. It was a desperate move, and it never activated. Before Echelon codes could be issued, every ship carrying the command relays vanished. Not destroyed. Vanished. Tracking logs showed them entering warp corridors that, moments later, ceased to exist. The relay ships never emerged. The warp corridors, upon investigation, were found to be artificial constructs seeded with gravitic traps. The technology to build them didn't exist. Not officially. In the inner chambers of the Terran Defense Assembly, a transmission played in real time. A Concord fleet marshal screaming. They were already inside our systems. We were compromised before this war even started. The room was silent as the recording looped again. They weren't reacting. They were confirming. The humans had known the entire time. Every maneuver, every lie, every betrayal. They had mapped it out, categorized it, and prepared for it. They weren't surviving a surprise attack. They were enacting sentence on a crime already committed. The remnants of Concord leadership tried to regroup. Peace envoys were sent, claiming rogue elements had acted without full authorization. They pleaded ignorance. Earth received those messages and responded with a single line: "Peace died when you chose to teach us war again." No retaliation followed that message. No missiles. No ultimatums. Earth simply vanished. All human transmissions ceased. Ships disappeared from scanners. Diplomatic channels fell silent. Trade vanished. It was as if humanity no longer existed. And in that void, the Concord species began to fear something far worse than war: absence. Weeks passed. Then a signal was intercepted near the outer rim, human origin but faint. A Concord scout team traced it to a derelict relay station floating in dead space. Inside was a single file, a fragment of text, a list. Each entry was a timestamp, a fleet designation, and the words, "We let you go." Dozens of entries, all labeled with dates before the treaty was signed. The implication was clear. Humanity had allowed the Concord to believe they'd won. Let them design their betrayal. Let them grow arrogant. All while Earth watched, studied, and memorized every tactic. The truth shattered the illusion of power Concord once held. Entire species began withdrawing from the alliance. Military leaders resigned. Civilian unrest escalated into systemic collapse in 2 sectors. And Earth still didn't speak. Eventually, a summit was held on Lyran Prime, the last neutral system. Species from across the stars gathered to form a new treaty, one that would exclude humanity and rebuild trust. The summit lasted 6 hours before a human drone appeared in orbit. It did not fire. It did not broadcast threats. It simply transmitted one sentence. "We do not forget." That was all it took. The summit dissolved in panic. The new treaty was abandoned, and the message spread across every quadrant. Humanity had not responded with revenge. They had responded with understanding. The galaxy had shown them its true face, and Earth had accepted it with quiet clarity. Human colonies remained fortified but silent. No expansion, no retaliation. They had proven their point. War wasn't needed, just a knowledge that, if it ever came again, humanity wouldn't be caught off guard. In the years that followed, stories grew in alien cultures. Stories of planets that fired on human ships and lost entire moons. Stories of spy networks that tried to infiltrate Earth and vanish without trace. Of diplomats who claimed to have been forgiven, only to die mysteriously years later. None were confirmed. All were believed, because humanity didn't need to shout. They didn't need to fight openly. Faith its arrogance, its greed, and its betrayal. Earth had simply made sure it remembered. Silence from humanity didn't mean peace. It meant consequence. And in the following months, the galaxy began to understand what that truly meant. Across the former Concord territories, uncertainty bred paranoia. Every unexplained systems glitch, every ghost signal, every missing freighter became a suspected human action. But Earth made no moves. They simply watched. On the colony world of Threxus, a research station found its atmosphere filters corrupted by code that didn't match any known signature. No one was harmed. Nothing was taken. But when the station's lead scientist decoded the corruption stream, he found a message layered in static. "We are watching you solve problems we solved before you turn on us." On the trading routes through the Calabar Drift, merchant convoys reported phantom pings in deep space, always 5 kilometers behind, always just beyond visual range. No responses, no threats, no attacks, just the echo of presence. When Concord investigators swept the area, they found nothing, but their report's last line was marked classified. All ghost pings were transmitted in human-engineered carrier frequencies. Even the most defiant factions began recalibrating their stance, not because of any direct human action, but because of what hadn't happened. Earth hadn't retaliated with scorched earth. They hadn't issued demands. They hadn't even answered diplomatic inquiries. Instead, humanity rebuilt, inwardly, quietly, purposefully. Earth's orbital yards operated in total blackout. No emissions, no signals, just structures growing in shadow. Human space became a black zone, not from aggression, but from withdrawal. No one could confirm what Earth was building. No one could verify what resources were being moved. All probes sent to investigate never returned. Concord remnants considered another strike, a preemptive one, before the humans could finish whatever they were preparing. The proposal never left committee. Someone sent the meeting's transcripts to Earth. How they were obtained, no one knew. But the very next day, those who had supported the strike found their home networks infected, not by malware, but by simulations. Hundreds of them. Each simulation showed the exact consequences of their plan. Economic collapse, societal unrest, species extinction rates. All outcomes calculated, not threatened. The message was simple. Try. We've already run the numbers. For every overt reminder of human capability, there were subtle ones. One Concord race, formerly aggressive, now isolationist, discovered that all their new defense algorithms had already been tested in secret by unknown observers. Their engineers never claimed responsibility. Their firewalls had never been breached. But buried deep in their system's logs were timestamps, all aligned to human universal standard hours. The galaxy began to adjust. New treaties were formed, this time without deception. Old enemies reconciled, if only to ensure that none stood alone if Earth ever returned. And that was the fear, not Earth's presence, but its return, because everyone sensed the same thing. Earth had not disappeared. Earth had simply gone quiet to build what came next. Human culture became taboo and legend, banned in some systems, studied in others. Museums held artifacts of Terran design behind blast glass, as if contact alone might trigger something. Songs humans once exported as harmless entertainment were now reinterpreted as coded threats. Children whispered stories about Terran warriors who never slept, only waited. Then, after years of silence, the signal came. A single, short transmission, spread across ancient frequencies, delivered in a format no longer used by modern civilizations. It read, "Treaties are only as sacred as the trust behind them. You taught us not to trust you. We accept that. Do not come looking for us." There was no return path, no coordinates, no invitation. The message wasn't a threat. It was a boundary. Some species respected it. Others didn't. One exploratory faction, a breakaway Concord sect, sent a fleet to reestablish contact. They never attacked, never broadcast hostility, just approached, slow and careful. The last transmission from that fleet was an audio recording of their captain whispering, "It's not what they built, it's what they became." Then silence. Sensors from surrounding systems picked up a fluctuation in local space-time. No weapons discharged, no mass ejection. The fleet was simply gone. All that remained was a void signature, a gravitational echo matching Earth's early warp field prototypes, but amplified 1,000-fold. For many, this was proof that Earth had evolved beyond conventional technology, beyond war. They had moved into a different kind of existence, one where offense wasn't necessary, because the very idea of assaulting them was now absurd. Alien philosophers argued whether this transformation was a reaction or a rebirth. Some claimed humanity had transcended physical limitations. Others believed they had just perfected deterrence. The truth didn't matter. The result was the same. Earth had become untouchable. Over time, the name human stopped appearing in political records. Species too young to remember, the war grew up with only fragments of Terran myths. They heard of a species that had walked through galactic lies and emerged without firing a shot in anger, only precision and warning. A species that looked at betrayal and decided not to return it, but to become something so prepared, so aware, so evolved, that no future betrayal could matter. And in that, Earth had won. Not the war, the principle. Peace had never been the lie. The lie was that peace could be built on dishonesty. Humanity never rejected peace. They rejected naivety. So, when new civilizations emerged, when the galactic community rebuilt itself, there was a new standard. A hidden clause in every diplomatic agreement. A concept that united even the bitterest rivals. Never deceive a species that adapts through pain. Because pain had taught humanity not just how to survive, but how to anticipate, how to endure without declaring revenge, how to let others reveal their own failures, and simply outlast the consequences. The galaxy had moved on, but somewhere on the edges of map space, in the systems marked no contact, the silent planets turned. No activity, no threats, just a single, constant signal broadcast in every direction, unreadable except to those who already knew the truth. And it said one thing: we remember